EP2, the Myriad Spirit Prefecture, was adjacent to the star-severing mountain range. It could be considered a famous prefecture. It wasn't only because 10,000 years ago, the biggest sect in the Myriad Spirit Prefecture was wiped out after entering the abyss of the star-severing valley. It was also because this was the closest prefecture to the Yunluo Academy, one of the 4 great academies in the star domain. After the Myriad Spirit Prefecture was the so-called capital of chaos, and the Yunluo Academy was located in the center. The size of the capital of chaos wasn't inferior to any of the big prefectures. Although there wasn't a single superpower in the capital of chaos that could truly dominate the world, there was a complicated relationship between the major powers. There were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. In the capital of chaos, there were countless gangs. After many years of conquest, they had become the name of chaos. In the capital of chaos, there were countless experts. It was said that the leader of the gang was the #1 genius, the sky-burying combatant. He had reached the monarch cultivation, and his name was well known throughout the entire star domain. He was also known as Heaven's surmounting monarch, and he was incomparably domineering. All of these had been heard by Xiao Yan on the way to Myriad Spirit Prefecture. As a famous place in the star domain, the Yunluo Academy was located in this place, like a lotus that had never been stained by mud. Furthermore, the environment there was undoubtedly the best training ground for the students who spent most of their time studying in the academy. Among the chaotic crowd, a small portion of them had a huge conflict with the Yunluo Academy. The leaders of the big sects that were ranked in the front were slightly acquainted with the dean of the Yunluo Academy. They wouldn't bother to attack the students. The weaker disciples would become the practice stones for the students of the Yunluo Academy. Of course, whether or not they would become the trainees or the trainees, they would become the practice stones for the students of the Yunluo Academy. It all depended on their own abilities. In the vast Myriad Spirit Palace, across the star-severing mountain range, there wasn't a sect called the Shao clan. It was a huge sect known as the Myriad Spirit Sect. It was said that the founder of the Myriad Spirit Sect was a personal disciple of the sect master who had been annihilated in the abyss. Initially, he didn't go with them because of his injuries, but he didn't expect that he would be able to survive. After arriving at the Myriad Spirit Palace, Xiao Yan didn't stop at all. He headed straight to the capital of chaos. With the transportation array in each city, Xiao Yan soon passed through more than half of the Myriad Spirit Palace and arrived at the capital of the Myriad Spirit Palace, Myriad Spirit City. Myriad Spirit City was also very far away from the capital of chaos. Just 3 cities away. During the period of rushing, Xiao Yan also calmed his heart down and studied the few secret arts Jade Fairy left behind. However, every time he cultivated, he would feel extremely uncomfortable. The yin qi that had just gathered in his body. When he touched the origin monarch qi that contained the monarch flame, it instantly dissipated. Xiao Yan searched his entire body but found nothing. He could only helplessly put it aside for the time being. The Xiao Ao within his body seemed to have gradually recovered after nearly half a month of traveling. Although the injuries within his body were still quite serious, it was already much better than before. Find a place to stop after arriving at Myriad Spirit City. You can't waste that earth fire profound crystal beast. It is a big fellow that is about to advance to a high-grade heavenly beast, and it is also a metal-attributed heavenly beast. As for the white tiger, it is metal. Extracting the essence energy in its body might be able to increase the power of the white tiger arts. The Xiaoao swallowed the broken eggshell in large gulps, and the sound rang out in Xiao Yan's mind. When he heard the sound of chewing, Xiao Yan could think of the former, and the painful expression on his face right now. After listening to the Xiaoao's words, Xiao Yan nodded his head. With the consciousness of the Xiaoao in his previous life, he could only listen to it. But don't hold too much hope. This big guy doesn't even have the strength of an emperor cultivation. He can only slightly strengthen the white tiger arts. It's impossible for him to directly advance a grade. Pausing for a moment, the Xiaoao lazily said. Hearing this, Xiao Yan let out a bitter laugh. He didn't take the blow of the Xiaoao to heart. The Four-Spirit Emperor technique was a legendary cultivation technique, even if he had the incomplete version of the technique. Xiao Yan was very clear about this point. But you don't have to be too sad. The power of the 5 forms of white tiger is gradually increasing. Even if it doesn't increase much, the power of the last technique can't be underestimated. The Xiaoao bit the eggshell in its hand and said vaguely. Xiao Yan pondered for a moment and nodded his head in understanding. If the power of the first style of the 5 styles of White Tiger was 1 and the power of each style was doubled, the power of the strengthened first style would be counted as 1 point, and the third style would be much stronger than before. Myriad Spirit City. As the capital of a prefecture, its prosperity was naturally irreplaceable. Xiao Yan, who had been walking in star-severing mountain range for almost half a year, couldn't help but feel amazed. There were 3 big families in Myriad Spirit City, and one of them was the Zhao family where Zhao Qingshan lived. When Xiao Yan found out that Zhao Qingshan belonged to the Zhao family, he couldn't help but have another thought. This old man had long regarded him as a thorn in his side. After the competition in Profound Yin Castle ended, he had never heard any news about this old man, and didn't know where he had gone. Naturally, he had to be more careful in Myriad Spirit City. Even if he had advanced to the 6th Dao Monarch Spirit, he would still have to face a Monarch Emperor warrior. Hong Long. After entering Myriad Spirit City, Xiao Yan walked around the city a few times and bought some of the things he needed. During this period of time, he naturally saw a few men and women in brocade robes with extraordinary expressions. From the conversations of the passers-by, Xiao Yan knew that these people were all disciples of the 3 great families of Myriad Spirit City. In Myriad Spirit City, there were some bored people who ranked the young generation of the 3 great families on the prodigy roll. Although this prodigy gang didn't receive the recognition of the 3 great families, most of the people in Myriad Spirit City were still interested in it. This prodigy gang was hung high up on the stone monument in front of the city lord's mansion. The annual competition in the city was the time for the prodigy gang to revise. Xiao Yan also came to the front of the city lord's mansion with great interest to watch the so-called Junji gang. When the Profound Yin sect held the competition, almost all of the young geniuses of the star-severing mountain range were gathered there. He just didn't know how the young geniuses of the 3 families in Myriad Spirit City were compared to the young geniuses of the star-severing mountain range. In the Excellence Gang, the genius of the Zhao family, Zhao Shuo, who was brought by Zhao Qingshan to the competition of the Profound Yin sect, was naturally listed on the list, and his ranking wasn't low either. He had reached the 4th place. The first place was also named Zhao Peng, and the strength of the latter was clearly indicated at the back. 6 Paths Emperor. 6 Dao Emperor wasn't weak for a young man. He didn't have a very strong talent. Reaching the Emperor realm at such a young age was simply unimaginable. Even if it was Yin Kang, he was only a 2-Path Emperor. However, the strength of the latter might not be able to defeat him even if he was a true Monarch Emperor. If the strength on this ranking list was the true strength of the youth generation in Myriad Spirit City, then it would be too weak. Xiao Yan looked at Zhao Shuo's name and narrowed his eyes. This guy's strength was written in 8 Monarch Spirit. However, Xiao Yan knew that in the competition of Profound Yin sect, this fellow had used the Pure Heaven Staff technique to put him in a deadlock. In fact, even an ordinary monarch was no match for him. If that was the case, then the number 1 Zhao Peng. Zhao Peng thought that he would be able to fight a peak of Monarch King. Shaking his head, Xiao Yan turned around and left. Towards the so-called 10,000 Spirits City's Young Excellence Gang, he was only fooling the ordinary people. How could a true powerhouse expose his true strength to a list? He found a comfortable hotel. Xiao Yan directly moved in. With the large sum of money that Jade Fairy sponsored, Xiao Yan naturally did not care about such a small amount of money. Dong. After entering the room and in the garden, Xiao Yan waved his hand and the earth-fire profound crystal beast's corpse appeared on the ground. Even after such a long time, his body was still emitting a strong murderous aura. Swoosh! A purple-colored flame flew out from Xiao Yan's body. The Xiao Ao immediately appeared in the courtyard. Its small face was still somewhat pale. It glanced at the earth-fire profound crystal beast's corpse and kicked it twice in a somewhat relieving manner. In order to kill this big fellow, it had burned the essence blood in its body as the price and had nearly injured its foundation. Seeing the Xiao Ao's childlike performance, Xiao Yan couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. "You are so arrogant, humph." The Xiao Ao pouted, then chuckled and rubbed his hands together. "All right, let's dissect the corpse now. Although this big guy is weak, to you, his entire body is a treasure." Quote, 1-inch creak. Following the sound of the door opening, Xiao Yan walked out of the room. After 2 days of hard work, he finally extracted the blood essence of the earth-fire profound crystal beast and merged it with the white tiger arts that he was cultivating. Although he did not feel much, he could vaguely sense that the meridians circulating the white tiger arts had become slightly stronger. Among the 3 forms of the white tiger, I need to learn the 3rd form of the white tiger spiritual spell as soon as possible. Without the powerful monarch skill, I can't feel at ease. Sighing, Xiao Yan left the inn. During the past 2 days, he had also communicated deeply with the Xiao Ao. Regarding the unusual phenomenon that the latter had displayed during the battle with the earth-fire profound crystal beast, the Xiao Ao had also made a vague statement. At that moment, his qi erupted. The ability that was hidden within his bloodline was also completely unlocked. After killing the earth-fire profound crystal beast, his body became extremely weak. If he didn't eat that egg fragment in time, it might really hurt his foundation. After hearing the Xiao Ao's words, Xiao Yan also became silent. The Xiao Ao was a holy beast that followed Elder Yi in his past life. It was understandable that it had the memories of his past life in its bloodline. However, with the former's weak strength, he was able to unleash such a powerful attack. It was reasonable for him to be injured. The only fortunate thing was that it did not hurt his foundation. If the White Tiger spiritual spell was successfully cultivated, it would be a genuine mid-grade monarch arts. Even if it was a monarch emperor level expert, it wouldn't be inferior to it. Yunluo Academy. In a valley, there was a hubbub of voices. Hundreds of young men and women were gathered here, whispering to each other. Most of these students were new students who had just entered the school in recent years. In recent years, the Yunluo Academy had cancelled the entrance exam. It was changed to a few weeks after they entered the school. They would be led by their seniors from previous years to the capital of chaos for a month. This way, it would prevent some of the students from using their family's influence to complete their own trials. Under the gazes of those who were filled with childishness, dozens of figures slowly appeared from the mouth of the valley. When they saw these people, all the students quieted down. Their gazes were somewhat fiery as they looked at these figures. The leader, an old man with a white beard, was hale and hearty. His gaze, which was filled with dignity, swept across the hundreds of students present. He slowly opened his mouth and said, "All of you have been here for nearly 3 to 4 months, and most of you have gotten familiar with this place. The reason why I made all of you wait for so long is because the seniors who were going to lead you to Capital of Chaos for the past few days have just finished their cultivation. Their strength is quite formidable. You have 10 people in a group. They will become the leaders of your group in the Capital of Chaos. Each group of you will have to complete the corresponding mission, and each group will have to complete the mission. Your leaders have already been selected, so you can only complete the mission. Otherwise, go back to where you came from." After hearing the white-bearded old man's indifferent voice, the hearts of all the students trembled. Of course, there was no lack of sneering people among them. Alarmist words? Even the Star Sky Academy isn't as serious as this. Even the Yunluo Academy, who is ranked last, is spouting nonsense here. Behind them, a young man wearing a blue brocade robe had a proud expression on his face. When he heard this, he couldn't help but snort disdainfully. When the young man beside him heard this, he smiled coldly and nodded his head. This was an academy that had been suppressed by the Star Sky Academy for several years. He wasn't afraid of being tongue-tied when he said such boastful words. If it wasn't for the fact that the Star Sky Academy's entrance competition is too strict, I would have come here. The young man who had spoken earlier snorted coldly and muttered to himself. The white-bearded old man slightly looked in the direction of the young man, but didn't say anything. He continued to introduce the general content of this trial. Ji Yu Yuan, I didn't expect that you have also reached the 5th Dao Monarch Spirit. I thought that I was the only one who has reached this realm. This is truly infuriating. Among the dozens of people behind the white-bearded old man, Zhu Kun and Ji Yu Yuan were among them. After listening to Zhu Kun's words, Ji Yu Yuan smiled gently and said, I have been cultivating an illusory spirit realm for such a long time. It's not right that I haven't made any progress. Due to the cultivation of the origin monarch Qi, Ji Yu Yuan was not as old as he was in the fighting Qi continent. His face was that of an ordinary young man. However, that kind of indifferent and majestic aura caused all the elders in the academy to feel ashamed of being inferior to him. Zhu Kun gently smiled. This is really like your style. Although Zhu Kun had reached a terrifying age in fighting Qi continent for tens of thousands of years, he had mostly recovered his youth in this place, just like 10,000 years ago, in his prime. Xuan and Kai Lin have also entered the illusory spirit realm. With their talent, I estimate that they will most likely advance to the monarch spirit. Ji Yuan narrowed his eyes and said faintly, "That's nothing. When we entered, we were only at the sovereign realm. It's already enough for us to reach this level in 4 years." Zhu Kun did not care at all. A man with thick black hair looked at Ji Yuan and said with a bitter smile, "It's not just that. When we went in, we were already at the monarch spirit. In these 4 years, we have only reached the 6th Dao monarch spirit. If we really fight, we are absolutely no match for you, Brother Ji Yu. You and Brother Zhu are the most talented men I have ever seen." After listening to what the green-clothed man said, Ji Yuan smiled and said, "Brother, you are being too harsh on us. You also know that Zhu Kun and I have broken through to the next realm because of the fighting monarch of lower realm." When the man in green heard this, he shook his head with a bitter smile. Although he knew, the talent of these two people was too shocking. "What is your mission?" After smiling mischievously, Zhu Kun looked at the students in front of him and said in a solemn voice, "Capital of Chaos was not a place to play. There was a risk of losing one's life at any time. Although most missions were not difficult, there was also the possibility of encountering unexpected incidents. Wu Shiwan, ranked 330 on the Academy's fierce ranking, take his head." Ji Yuan helplessly sighed. Those who were able to obtain fierce rankings were mostly bullies in Capital of Chaos. Although those who were ranked 200 and below were small fries, it still depended on their own strength. Wu Shiwan was merely a 6 paths monarch spirit. With his strength, killing the former was not difficult, but his main task was to train these new students. In the Capital of Chaos where danger lurked everywhere, this was much more difficult. 330 fierce rankings. With your strength, it won't be a problem for you to be careful. Zhu Kun smiled and patted Ji Yuan's shoulder. A purple light flashed in his eyes, and he whispered into Ji Yuan's ear, 330 Ji Yuans. With your strength, it is not a problem for you to be careful. These new students are very arrogant. Sometimes, it's not bad to teach them a lesson. Ji Yuan nodded. His sharp eyes swept across the hundreds of young men in front of him. Of course I know these people. They are the patriarchs of some major families. It wouldn't make sense if they don't have such means. Zhu Kun nodded his head in satisfaction. He didn't say anything else. With his and Ji Yuan's strength, as long as they didn't encounter any monarch emperor warriors or above, they wouldn't have any problem escaping. This time, the trial wasn't only for the new students, it was also for the old students like them. I wonder how Xiaoyan is doing right now. With his abilities, I'm afraid he has already reached the monarch spirit level. Ji Yuan sighed and said in a low voice. Zhu Kun heard what he said and smiled. We have been cultivating all day in illusory spirit realm. We relied on the vigorous origin monarch Qi to advance to the 5th Dao monarch spirit. Xiaoyan will definitely break through to the monarch spirit by himself, but he won't be able to surpass us. Ji Yuan pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Zhu Kun sneered when he saw this. Old man, I didn't know you could surpass your son-in-law and show off your father-in-law's power. You should just enjoy it secretly. Ji Yuan smiled awkwardly when Zhu Kun said it. His face couldn't help but turn red. He pretended to cough and said, You can't say that. Xiaoyan's strength is naturally better. It doesn't matter if he is stronger than me. He can prove how good Xuan judgment is. Zhu Kun snorted and rolled his eyes. If I had known earlier, I would have let Xiaoyan marry Ziyan in fighting Qi continent. Ji Yuan smiled awkwardly. Just as he was about to speak, the white-bearded elder coughed lightly. Everyone's expression immediately became solemn. Now, all the leaders will lead their students to the Capital of Chaos. The trial has officially begun. Quote, One after leaving Myriad Spirit City, Xiaoyan didn't stay any longer in the other cities. With the help of the transportation array, he arrived at the border city of Myriad Spirit Prefecture in just a few days' time. Yunzhou City. After passing Yunzhou City, he entered the Capital of Chaos. The atmosphere in Yunzhou City was a little chaotic as it was adjacent to the Capital of Chaos. Every day, there would be all kinds of people coming from the Capital of Chaos to avoid disaster, but most of them would pass through the transportation array and head to the capital of chaos. In the chaos, there were always endless opportunities, and this kind of opportunity was what everyone dreamt of. It was said that 100 years ago, a slave of a large family in Yunzhou City was expelled from the residence. He almost died, and by chance, he came to capital of chaos. He had obtained the inheritance of a powerful expert by a great fortune and appeared a few years later. He was already a monarch emperor-level warrior. When he returned to Yunzhou City, he had destroyed the family that had chased him away with his own strength, shocking the entire Yunzhou City. The city lord of Yunzhou City was only a newly advanced monarch emperor expert, so he naturally didn't dare to make a move. He allowed the former to leave, and after that, he made a name for himself in capital of chaos. In the past 100 years, he had killed hundreds of people in a single night. However, he had become the target that everyone yearned for. Almost everyone had this goal in mind, and wanted to make a name for themselves in capital of chaos. And the result of this incident was that when that slave committed a crime in the future, those large families would basically kill him directly, fearing that what happened 100 years ago would happen in their family. During the past few days of traveling, Xiao Yan had also carefully studied the third style of the White Tiger arts, the White Tiger spiritual spell. In the end, he could only helplessly admit that the monarch arts was not that easy to learn. As for the few secret art scrolls that Jade Fairy gave him, he was even more confused. The only improvement he made in these few days was his familiarity with the first two styles of the White Tiger arts and the continuity of the first two punches of the Silent Sky Fist. Near the transportation array of Yunzhou City, there was a bustling scene. From time to time, there would be men who were seriously injured limping out of it. Their bodies were covered in blood, and there were even people who were left with only one breath left. I heard that the students of Yunluo Academy have started their training these few days. Some of the powers in Capital of Chaos have become active as well. A tall and thin man sneered as he looked at a burly man who was being carried over by his companions and was about to enter the Capital of Chaos. Xiao Yan stood in front of the tall and thin man. Hearing this, Xiao Yan's heart couldn't help but move. He looked behind him in a subtle way. I heard that there is a fierce ranking in the Yunluo Academy that records all the ferocious people in the Capital of Chaos. In order to train in the Yunluo Academy, we need to kill some of the evil people in it. This way, the Capital of Chaos will be in chaos. A middle-aged man next to the tall and thin man laughed. He rubbed his bald head and clicked his tongue. You're wrong. Not only does the Yunluo Academy have a fierce ranking, but there is also a ranking list of the Yunluo in the Capital of Chaos. It records the famous geniuses of the Yunluo Academy. The disciples of the Yunluo will be rewarded for killing them, and they will also be rewarded for killing the disciples of the Yunluo. The tall and thin man shook his head and said with a cold smile. Therefore, the Capital of Chaos is the most chaotic place at this time. Both sides are scheming against each other, and they are trying to obtain the heads of their opponents. Ha ha! Hearing this, Xiao Yan furrowed his brows slightly. For some reason, his heart tightened. For some reason, he had a feeling that was hard to describe. Hey, it's just a small matter. The waters in Capital of Chaos are really deep. Some of the true powers haven't taken any action yet. While they were talking, an old man in a gray robe walked over slowly. His muddy eyes glanced at the tall and thin man. Then, he rudely interrupted the crowd and arrived in front of the transportation array. Just as the guards were about to scold him, the old man slowly took out a black iron token. When the guards saw this, their facial expression changed drastically. They hurriedly activated the transportation array and let the old man pass first. When they saw the attitude of the guards toward the old man, those who were still unconvinced fell silent. This place was the closest to the Capital of Chaos. The big shots there could come at any time. With their abilities, they could do whatever they wanted in Yunzhou City. Xiao Yan watched the old man disappear into the transportation array with some surprise. In his senses, this old man had reached the monarch emperor. Even in the Capital of Chaos, he should be considered a powerful warrior. The tall and thin middle-aged man couldn't help but take a deep breath. His arrogance had long disappeared. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and remained silent. If he offended that expert, with his strength as an emperor, he wouldn't even know how he died. Capital of Chaos. Xiao Yan pursed his lips and looked at the transportation array that was constantly being transported. He couldn't help but feel excited in his heart. After nearly 15 minutes, it was finally Xiao Yan's turn. He handed the fee to the guards and Xiao Yan and dozens of people entered the transportation array together. In a flash of light, Xiao Yan and the others had disappeared. The moment Xiao Yan disappeared, Zhao Qingshan's figure suddenly appeared behind the line of people. Looking at the long line of people, he pondered for a moment. After that, he took out a black profound iron token and sneered. He went up to the guards and waved the black metal token in his hand. As expected, the guard quickly stood up respectfully. Zhao Qingshan was the first to go over. Zhao Qingshan chuckled. He didn't expect this thing to be so useful. The Black Moon sect was indeed worthy of being ranked in the top 50 of the Chaotic 100 sect. A light flashed. Xiao Yan opened his eyes, and a vast plain appeared before his eyes. In front of him was a red city that stretched for thousands of miles. It was several times bigger than all the cities Xiao Yan had seen before. This is the capital of chaos, a city, and an area. Xiao Yan raised his head and looked at the city. He couldn't help but exclaim at the magnificent city. The capital of chaos was both a region and a city. This place is comparable to a prefecture, let alone the Yunluo Academy in the center. They were traveling together. Someone praised in a low voice. Yunluo Academy. Xiao Yan took a deep breath. All these years of dreams would be realized here. It was impossible for him not to be excited. At this moment, there were many people and carriages on the vast plain. The people who were teleported from different places were all heading towards capital of chaos. Xiao Yan did not hesitate. His body moved and he had already rushed forward. As he looked at the majestic city that stood between the heavens and the earth, he could not help but recall the legend of the capital of chaos in his mind. Countless years ago, a peerless expert who was known as the Master of Chaos suddenly appeared. He fought against many experts with his own strength. Later, he became a saint and swept across the world. After that, he challenged the Master of Mingan Divine Domain. Under the eyes of the world, the Master of Chaos won, and his name spread across the entire world. Just as he was about to kill the Domain Master of Mingan Divine Domain, a mysterious expert appeared and made a bet with the Master of Chaos. If the Master of Chaos won, he could become the Domain Master of Mingan Divine Domain. If he lost, he would be hidden from the world and would not be allowed to appear in this world. The Master of Chaos was young and aggressive, so he naturally agreed. The result of the battle shocked everyone. In just one move, the Master of Chaos was defeated by the mysterious expert. The Chaos Lord was quite carefree. He left the Mingan Divine Domain and came to the Star Domain. No one had seen him since then. However, 100 years later, the capital of chaos appeared out of nowhere. The Master of the Domain wasn't the Master of Chaos, but an ordinary-looking young man. That young man had mastered the ultimate skill of the Master of Chaos. Some people were confused by the Master of Chaos. However, the former only had the strength of a heavenly sovereign level. Those who had great abilities secretly checked it and confirmed that it was not the Master of Chaos. No one knew where the Chaos Master had gone. After that young man established the capital of chaos, the capital of chaos had also suddenly disappeared without any restrictions. Since then, chaos had started, but what was unbelievable was that every time a peerless expert wanted to enter the capital of chaos, all the powers that were fighting continuously would join forces to fight against them. This had caused the capital of chaos to not be truly controlled by anyone for countless years. This had also caused the name of the capital of chaos to spread far and wide. The capital of chaos was called a city, but it was full of different colors. In the city, there were continuous mountain ranges and endless dark plains. The bustling pavilions and pavilions were located in different places. They were scattered all over the place like stars in the sky. The people who entered the capital of chaos flooded into the city like a flood. They did not see the expected bustling shops, but what they saw was still the endless Kang mountain plain. At the end of their sight, countless buildings were like tiny black dots, embedded in the vast plain. This is the outer city. It's at least a day's journey away from the inner city. Among the people who were rushing, there were some emotional voices. Obviously, they had been conquered by the huge size of the capital of chaos. When Xiao Yan heard this, he was secretly shocked. This capital of chaos was actually so vast, and it was even more appropriate to call it the Chaotic Palace. Although it is still far from the inner city, this place is also unusually chaotic. Those small powers that are weaker than the chaotic crowd are here, but they are still the local snake. Some of the people who were traveling with him were clearly experienced as they laughed coldly. The number of people entering the outer city increased. Even though this place was an endless wasteland, some factions still occupied this place. Some friction could be seen from time to time. Around half a day later, the surrounding wasteland finally slowly disappeared. Numerous spacious paths appeared in front of their eyes, which led directly to the inner city. Ja! A sharp cry suddenly sounded. Xiao Yan frowned slightly. Wind blew under his feet, and he dodged in the nick of time. In the next moment, a divine and handsome spirit horn colt galloped past. Its entire body was scarlet red, and there was not a single strand of fur on its body. It strode forward with its head held high, appearing just like the emperor of horses. On the back of the spirit horn stallion was a silver-robed young man with a handsome appearance, and he seemed as if there was no one around him. He waved the whip in his hand and drove the spirit horn stallion forward explosively. What audacity! You actually dared to act so atrociously here. A middle-aged man that was knocked to the side by the spirit horn stallion was furious, and his feet stomped on the ground as he charged explosively towards the spirit horn stallion. His strength had already reached the emperor realm, and it was still possible for him to catch up to the spirit horn stallion that was only at the intermediate rank of the spirit beast. The handsome man heard the sound of rushing wind behind him. He looked over coldly and saw the furious middle-aged man. He laughed coldly and swung the horsewhip in his hand. The origin monarch chi on it surged. In an instant, a sharp emperor chi whip shot out. Before the latter could react, it had already ruthlessly struck him. In an instant, the miserable cry of the middle-aged man resounded by everyone's ears. Xiao Yan was somewhat surprised as he looked at the silver-robed young man on the back of the spirit horn stallion a short distance away. The horsewhip in the latter's hand suddenly emitted a bright light. Clearly, it was not an ordinary object. Although it was far from being able to compare with the spiritual energy fluctuation of the blue flame ruler, it was much stronger when compared to a middle-tier spirit weapon. You blind thing! How dare you stop me? Today, I'll let you have a long memory. After knocking the middle-aged man to the ground, the silver-gowned youth turned his horse around and galloped to the side of the middle-aged man. With a cold smile, he jumped off the spirit horn stallion and waved the long whip in his hand. As the spirit light surged, the middle-aged man had already lost his life here. Grasping the whip, the silver-gowned youth coldly looked at the surrounding people. He mounted the spirit horn stallion and directly left this place. This might be the first time this fellow has come here. How dare the young master of the Silver Moon Group provoke him? He must be tired of living. The young man left. Among the crowd, some of the more experienced ones sighed softly. When the crowd heard this, they shivered. The Silver Moon Group was famous in the inner city, and there were countless experts in their group. They belonged to one of the major powers in the capital of chaos, and that young man was the young master of the Silver Moon Group. This guy had died an innocent death. A bunch of ants. How dare they bump into me? I really don't know how to write the word, death. The silver-gowned youth rode on the spirit horn stallion, his expression cold. If those fellows in the inner city knew about this, then there really wouldn't be any place for him to put his face. Don't say that. This is the capital of chaos after all. What we need the most is respect and order. A faint laughter was transmitted from behind the silver-robed young man after his words sounded. The former's expression changed drastically. His body moved and he jumped off his horse. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the black-robed young man who had appeared behind him at some point in time. Who are you? The silver-robed young man was shocked in his heart. He had actually not sensed that this fellow was behind him at all. Xiao Yan used all his strength to clamp down on the horse's belly. Under the pressure of the powerful qi, the wild and unruly spirit horn stallion obediently stopped. It gently swung its ponytail as if it was trying to express its goodwill. My name is Xiao Yan. It's nothing much. There's a distance between us. There's still some distance to the inner city. Riding a horse is a bit faster than walking, right? Xiao Yan smiled lightly and looked at the young man in silver robe. Although the young man looked like a peak of monarch spirit warrior, he was able to kill an emperor in an instant, so he couldn't be underestimated. The young man in silver robe remained silent after hearing what Xiao Yan said. He stared at Xiao Yan for a long time before he slowly said, "You are not from capital of chaos." The silver-gowned youth sneered when he saw Xiao Yan nod his head. He stretched out his hand and slowly clenched it as he said, then you should know about the chaotic 100 sects, right? Xiao Yan laughed coldly when he heard this. His body moved and he landed on the back of his horse. He suddenly extended his hand and the pupils of the silver-robed young man shrunk to the size of a needle. He was just about to dodge when Xiao Yan had already grabbed his neck. Don't follow my illustrious family background. In Capital of Chaos, there is no difference between a dead man and an ant. What do you think is the difference between a dead young master and an ant? Hearing the coldness in Xiao Yan's voice, the face of the young man in silver robe twitched. He looked at Xiao Yan with hatred. He moved his arm and the horsewhip in his hand jumped out. It cut through the air like a sharp sword and went straight for Xiao Yan's head. Xiao Yan slightly raised his eyelids. Flames curled on his palm as he grabbed at the whip. When he was in Thousand Spirits City, he had used up all the body-tempering liquid. Right now, his body was as hard as an emperor's. This whip had not even reached the level of a high-tier spirit weapon. Xiao Yan was confident that he could block it with his physical body alone. Kai! The whip shot out explosively. Xiao Yan held it tightly and could not move forward anymore. Amidst the flames, the whip buzzed in Xiao Yan's hand. Spiritual energy surged wildly, but it could not break free from Xiao Yan's palm. The heart of the silver-robed youth sank into a deep valley. When he saw Xiao Yan's cold gaze, the former's arrogance no longer existed. He unwillingly gritted his teeth and finally lowered his head. He had lost control of himself. The long whip in Xiao Yan's hand had also lost its spirituality and fell to the ground. This will be great. Xiao Yan let go of the whip with a smile. The hand that held the neck of the silver-robed youth looked at the latter with a smile that wasn't a smile. What's your name? Gritting his teeth, the silver-robed youth felt the pain coming from his neck. He spoke in a voice filled with unwillingness. Luo Xing. Luo Xing. Xiao Yan nodded and looked at the latter's brocade robe. His eyes paused for a moment and said, I have also heard about the Silver Moon Group. They are ranked in the top 50 of the chaotic 100 sects. They are very powerful. Luo Xing sneered when he heard this. Of course. My Silver Moon Group is a famous sect in the West Capital. Who doesn't know about it? After saying that, Luo Xing changed the topic. He looked at Xiao Yan and said in a deep voice, What exactly do you want? Xiao Yan smiled and said, Didn't I tell you to go to the inner city? He paused for a moment. Xiao Yan pondered for a moment, then looked at Luo Xing and said slowly, Your status in the Silver Moon Group should not be small, right? Luo Xing's eyes slightly narrowed, and he said coldly, What? You want to use me to threaten the Silver Moon Group? I advise you to give up this idea as soon as possible. Before he could finish his words, Xiao Yan had already extended his hand and interrupted Luo Xing's words. He smiled and shook his head. No, I just want to know whose name is on the so-called Young Luo ranking. Since he was about to enter the academy, he naturally had to understand the geniuses within. The best way to understand their strength was to get to know them from their enemies. Although the strength displayed on the ranking board was unreliable, the Academy's internal ranking board was even more difficult to believe. Yan Luo ranking? Luo Xing was slightly stunned when he heard this. He took a deep look at Xiao Yan, then he laughed lightly and said, Could it be that you are also interested in those guys from the Yan Luo Academy? Seeing Xiao Yan smile without saying anything, Luo Xing also laughed and said, The Yan Luo's ranking is organized by most of the disciples in the chaotic 100 sects. It can be considered as a general summary of the students of the Yan Luo Academy. Those who can make it onto the ranking are all powerful people, and their value is also relatively high. After all, out of the tens of thousands of students in recent years, there are only 100 of them who can make it onto the ranking. This is a demonstration of their abilities. However, those who make it onto the ranking are also fat sheep that makes people jealous. When Luo Xing said this, he smiled slightly, and his eyes were filled with greed. Speak. Xiao Yan did not show any emotion. He looked at Luo Xing and said coldly, The current Yan Luo's ranking list appeared 5 years ago. There hasn't been any genius from the Yan Luo Academy appearing in these past few years, so there hasn't been any major changes. Luo Xing was startled by the coldness in Xiao Yan's tone. He looked at the latter with lingering fear in his heart. After pondering for a moment, he said, The one ranked at the top of the list. It seems to be a guy called Mu Yuyang. I heard that the last time this guy attacked was 3 years ago. He killed a monarch emperor-level expert with a single strike. After that, he never showed his face again. Killing a monarch emperor with a single strike? Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He immediately recalled what Elder Fang from the Yunluo Academy had told him when they first arrived in the Great World. There was also a powerful warrior who had passed the holy rank trial in the academy. Could it be him? Killing a monarch emperor with a single strike. This strength was really too powerful. The second one is called Lin Dao. His strength is also very strong. About a year ago, this guy came out to train. He was surrounded by 50 to 60 people. The leader was 5 peak of monarch king warriors. However, half an hour later, Lin Dao came out safe and sound. Those people are all dead. Lin Dao. Xiao Yan was shocked. Lin Jian's younger brother was also called Lin Dao. It seemed like it was most likely him. He didn't expect this guy to be so powerful. The third one is called Xiao Yi. He is a member of the Xiao clan. He is also very strong. He once single-handedly killed a disciple of the Xiao clan. Quote, 2 inches Xiao Yi. Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat when he heard this name. He gently touched the storage ring on his hand. This guy was the grandson of the Xiao clan's great elder. There was still a letter from the great elder in his storage ring. These 3 guys are terrifyingly strong, but it's only a matter of time. Luo Xing suddenly smiled. Holding the long whip in his hand, he said with interest, in all these years, not many of the rising stars of the Yunluo can be seen. According to the usual practice, this is the time for the disciples of the Yunluo Academy to train in the illusory spirit realm. Whether they can make it to the top or not will depend on this time. Xiao Yan glanced at Luo Xing. This guy knew quite a lot. What is the illusory spirit realm? Noticing the words coming out of Luo Xing's mouth, Xiao Yan's expression changed as he asked. Luo Xing shrugged. This is a secret of Yunluo Academy. I only heard it from some experts of Capital of Chaos. Xiao Yan glanced at Luo Xing but didn't say anything. He raised his head and looked into the distance. There, the outline of a huge city was faintly visible. It looked like an ancient ferocious beast crawling on the ground, ferocious and terrifying. If what Luo Xing said was true, then Jiyu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the others had just come out of illusory spirit realm. It seemed impossible for them to find out about their current situation. In that case, thank you very much. Lend this spirit horn stallion to me first. Xiao Yan chuckled and mounted the horse, leaving behind a trail of dust in front of Luo Xing's ugly expression. Bastard! How dare you snatch my mount? By the time Luo Xing recovered from his shock, Xiao Yan was already far from being able to escape on his spirit horn stallion. Immediately, he flew into a rage and whistled continuously in an attempt to call back the spirit horn stallion. However, the latter was firmly controlled by Xiao Yan and was unable to escape. Damn it! Luo Xing ruthlessly grabbed the long whip in his hand. His expression was gloomy. Just who was this fellow? He sped along. Roughly 4 hours later, the outline of the huge city wall in front of him became clearer and clearer. The renowned capital of Chaos Inner City finally appeared in front of Xiao Yan. The huge city wall that stretched for thousands of miles was like a peerless ferocious beast that came from the ancient era. A murderous aura filled the entire sky. It was a frightening pressure that could shake one's heart. According to the legends, the establishment of the capital of chaos was even earlier than the time when the Soul Demon wreaked havoc in the Great World. At that time, there were countless experts in the Great World, and the Master of Chaos was one of the most outstanding ones among them. He had built the capital of chaos with his own strength, and after millions of years, he had stood tall and still, and had even become the symbol of the star domain. Xiao Yan had already dismounted and walked away from the city gate. The spirit horn stallion was an extremely intelligent spirit beast, and in this place, it naturally knew where to go. Entering the inner city was also the same. The years of hard work that they had put in had finally paid off at this moment. The city gate was nearly 100 meters wide. A majestic aura was rushing towards them. It was cold and imposing. Most of the powers in the chaotic crowd were scattered in the inner city. As for the famous top few powers, it was hard to find their headquarters. Regarding the conflict between the capital of chaos and the Yunluo Academy, these powerful existences were no longer in between. Otherwise, no matter how talented the students of the Yunluo Academy were, they would all die without exception if they encountered Emperor Cultivation or Monarch Cultivation warriors. After entering the inner city, Xiao Yan finally found out about the majesty of the capital of chaos. What he saw was countless towering pavilions and pavilions. The noisy noise came from all directions, causing Xiaoyan's mind to tremble slightly. In the distance, the mountain range rose and fell, making it hard for people to believe that this was the inner city. With this thought in mind, Xiaoyan couldn't help but have a new understanding of the strength of a supreme saint. At this level of strength, one could really move mountains and seas, and there was nothing that could be done about it. According to Luo Xing, the students of the Yunluo Academy are training in the capital of chaos right now. Who knows, I might be able to meet a few of them. After pondering for a while, Xiaoyan quickly made up his mind. Although he wasn't sure whether Jiu Yuan and the others would come out to train, he could still bump into a few students of the Yunluo Academy here. It was still very useful for him to understand the Yunluo Academy. The most important thing was, with Xuan Ur, Kai Lin, and the others' talent, even in the Yunluo Academy, they were destined to shine. He could ask around. When he thought of this, Xiaoyan could no longer suppress the excitement in his heart. He roughly identified a direction and rushed out. In the western capital of chaos. There were many people in this place, and there were countless crouching tigers and hidden dragons. However, on the surface, the Silver Moon Group was the #1 faction, and it was ranked 41st among the 100 chaotic factions. The capital of chaos was really too vast. Most of the chaotic 100 sects were very far away from each other. Firstly, they had avoided conflicts, and secondly, they had reduced the opposition between the two parties. For example, the western capital had a vast territory, but there were only 3 gangs. The Silver Moon Group was undoubtedly the overlord of these gangs. In the inner hall of the Silver Moon Group's headquarters, a man with 2 arms wrapped in bandages was skinny. His gloomy face had a venomous look in his eyes, which made all the maids around him shiver. They were afraid that they would accidentally offend the younger brother of the sect master. The man's cold eyes swept across his arms. Although he had recovered a little, he still could not fully exert his strength. If it were not for the timely treatment at that time, his 2 arms would have been crippled. Bastard of the Yunluo Academy. When he thought of the founder, the man flew into a rage. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He suddenly stood up and kicked the wooden table to the side. The wooden table was instantly broken into pieces, hitting a servant girl who couldn't dodge in time. With a wail, the servant girl fell to the ground helplessly. Blood flowed down her head, and she was dead. When the other maid servants saw this, their hearts were all shaken. The fear in their eyes as they looked at the man became even greater. "Why are you throwing a tantrum with them here?" A faint voice suddenly sounded, and then a slender middle-aged man strode in. The man had a dignified appearance, and he wore a silver robe. There was a silver moon drawn on his robe, and his imposing manner was overbearing as he walked. "Master Gang." Upon seeing the person who had come, these maids hurriedly bowed and greeted him. Luo Jun nodded with a solemn expression. He glanced at the maid servants who had fallen to the ground and waved his hand. Immediately, someone came forward and dragged him out. "Big brother." Luo Chong's face twitched when he saw the middle-aged man. He then sat down on the chair and stopped talking. Luo Jun waved his hand and dismissed all the maid servants. Only then did he look at Luo Chong. "Don't worry. I have already invited Zhao Qingshan from Myriad Spirit City to come here. It shouldn't be difficult for him to treat your injured arm." Luo Chong's expression changed slightly when he heard that. He said, "Why do you have to risk your life to get close to him? It is not like there are no alchemists in Capital of Chaos." Luo Jun smiled lightly and patted Luo Chong's shoulder. "Don't think too much about it. You should know what happened in Capital of Chaos. When one person is in trouble, there are many who add insult to injury. Big brother is afraid that they have malicious intentions towards you." Luo Chong's gloomy expression finally eased up after hearing what Lin Dao said. He coldly snorted and said while gnashing his teeth, "Lin Dao, one day, I will make you beg for death." Luo Jun looked at Luo Chong indifferently and said softly, "You don't need to worry about this matter." 8 months ago, Lin Dao came out to train. He was looking for an opportunity to break through. I heard that he went to Star-Severing Mountain Range and went to visit the Yunluo Academy. Presumably, your strength has improved. With your current strength, even if you have recovered both your arms, you won't be a match for him. After a pause, Luo Jun sneered. "But don't worry, he is ranked 2nd on the Yunluo's leaderboard. There are many people who want to take his head. In the sect, his head is worth 1 billion monarch crystals." 1 billion? Luo Chong was slightly shocked, but his facial expression became even gloomier. This was the symbol of strength. Even so, when he recalled that he had been casually struck by Lin Dao 8 months ago, the bones in his arms had been completely shattered and he had almost lost his life. That's right. I heard that some of the new disciples from the Yun Luo have revealed their abilities. The one closest to this place is called Zhu Kun. Although he only has the strength of 5 monarch spirit, he won't be at a disadvantage against an emperor. Luo Jun suddenly smiled and gave Luo Chang a meaningful look. Zhu Kun? Luo Chang frowned when he heard this, and then his eyes revealed hatred. Fighting against an emperor with the strength of 5 monarch spirit warriors. This talent was comparable to Mu Yuyang's talent in the past. Lin Dao and the others weren't any weaker than him. Swoosh! Luo Chang suddenly stood up. He said in a cold voice, "All right, I'll go and test the abilities of this new disciple from the Yun Luo." When Luo Jun saw this, the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. Your injuries haven't recovered yet, so you can't use your full strength. If something goes wrong, you will lose an arm of the Silver Moon Group. Before he could finish his words, Luo Chang had already shouted furiously. They are just a few puny monarch spirit warriors. There is no need for you to use your full strength. Killing them will be the perfect time for you to vent your anger. As he spoke, Luo Chang strode out. Seeing Luo Chang's back disappear, the smile on Luo Jun's face gradually widened. His flickering eyes were especially strange in the dark inner hall. Be careful. Following a furious roar, a purple gold figure rushed over. It was like a lightning bolt that had pierced through space. It arrived in an instant. Dense origin monarch cheese surged out violently. In an instant, it sent a huge lion-shaped spirit beast flying. Fresh blood continued to flow along the way. After breaking many trees, it finally came to a stop. It had completely ceased breathing. Incredible. The surrounding 10 students looked at Zhu Kun, who had slowly appeared. All of them quietly sighed in admiration. Killing a high-tier spirit beast with a single strike. This strength was indeed worthy of being the leader. Waving his sleeves, Zhu Kun glanced at the surrounding students and said in a cold voice, "I have already told all of you. You must pay attention to concealing your aura while walking here. All of you are swaggering by, and it will be difficult for you not to be discovered." Upon hearing Zhu Kun's words, the faces of the students turned red. They did not know what to say. Looking at these young and tender little fellows, Zhu Kun sighed and comforted them. "This time, forget it. We must be careful. This is not the academy. There are dangers everywhere." He, well said. Just as Zhu Kun was speaking, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded. In the next instant, a man wearing a silver robe rushed over. Both of his arms were covered with bandages. His dark and cold eyes looked at Zhu Kun's group. The cruel smile on the corner of his mouth suddenly became savage.